All right, welcome South Coast. It's Mike Silva, New Bedford Guide and Fall Reporter. We got a special, non-really scheduled event here. We usually have our weekly shows, but we want to do something, bring you guys something special, which is the Karen Reed, Officer John O'Keefe story. No one knows it better than Aidan Kearney, aka Turtle Boy. So we wanted to get him on here. I would say it's the hottest topic of 2023 if you live in Massachusetts, and it's becoming the hottest story around the country. If you're watching this, like it, share it. If you want, ask Aiden a question or ask me a question, go ahead and put it in there. We can bring it up and bring it up for to answer. Let's see here. So Aiden has put in, I would estimate, hundreds of hours into this case since this happened starting last year. Also with me is former mayor of Fall River, Will Flanagan, who is going to kind of be our legal analysis here. So we'll, and of course, ask some of the questions. So anyone doesn't know out there, me and Aiden have a little bit of history. I interviewed him when he had his I Am Turtle Boy book many years ago. It's a really good book. If you haven't got that, I think you can get that still on Amazon. We also covered the 2020 election out there.
That's right.
When Trump was running for re-election.
That was a busy night.
Yeah, and Aiden, I think honestly, if you didn't get taken down on Facebook years ago, I think you'd be as big as Barstool Sports right now.
That's really big. I mean, I think I would have done okay, but we had like 112,000 followers on Facebook as of, I think it was like 2017 it went down. But you know, you got to constantly build new ones. I mean, I honestly, it would probably be close to at least 500,000 at this point, but at the rate we're growing right now with like YouTube and Twitter, and Twitter's a completely free speech zone now. We'll be back in no time. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I just think the trajectory you were on and how you were expediting, your numbers were rising, and suddenly you got taken off of Facebook. I remember that day. I thought you were like on the path to millions of followers, and you got taken.
It's a completely different kind of blog than it was, in 2017. It's like we were shaming ratchets, selling food stamps on Facebook, and now we're solving murders. So it's drastically evolved the content. So it's a completely different kind of media outlet than it was back then. So.
Yeah, and I would say anytime anyone mentions Turtle Boy, if you're in a Starbucks, you're out and about, it's either a love-hate relationship, I would say, right? It's either like you have like the diehard fans out there, or you have people with just the diehard haters. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
Usually, yeah, but with this story, it's different. This story has kind of united people along political lines because it's apolitical. I mean, I think we can all agree corruption is a bad thing, especially when it comes from some of the most powerful institutions in our state. If we can't trust them, that's a huge problem. And that's exactly, I mean, Karen Reed's innocent. Bottom line, Karen Reed is not just innocent, she's factually innocent. The facts, she's not just not guilty, she is 1000% innocent, and she's being lynched by the district attorney of Norfolk County and the Massachusetts State Police. And that's not something we can unite behind. I don't know what it is.
Well, Aidan, let me ask you this question, and let me jump into it. You are being vocal against a district attorney, you're being vocal against local police, and you're being vocal against the Massachusetts State Police. What made you want to get involved in this case? And I got to say, either you got some big balls or you're crazy. What's going on? What made you want to get involved here?
Or both.
Both.
I mean, I first saw this story after a court filing in April by Alan Jackson, her attorney, and it's like a 92-page affidavit, and I read it all over after it had made some waves in the media. I saw something about a Google search being made about how long to die in cold. That's kind of what caught my attention. And I started looking into it, and every new page I read, my jaw dropped more. And, I always look for bias. I understand, they're representing their client. They're paid to represent her, right? But at the same time, they brought receipts. I like receipts, and they backed up everything that they had to say. So the first thing that really caught my attention is that this woman who was being charged with allegedly running over her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, and killing him, that somebody inside the house behind me at 34 Fairview Road, where she dropped them off, had Googled at 2:27 in the morning, how long to die in cold. And the people inside, the story that they told is that John O'Keefe never came in the house, that they just assumed that he went home. Yet at 2:27 in the morning, they're Googling how long to die in cold, which is a weird thing to Google if you think unless you know that somebody's either on the lawn already or you plan on putting him out in the middle of a snowstorm. It was January 28th to 29th of 2022. There was a major nor'easter going on at the time. It was like, below 20 degrees outside. You die. The answer to that question is you die in like 2 hours, basically, from hypothermia. So they just threw his lifeless body out there. And I was just shocked that our system, I did not think that police and the district attorney's office were capable of something so evil and cruel. But it just became undeniable the more I read about it.
Yeah, let me I got to be honest. This is a story, we're all busy in our life. It's a story that I haven't followed very closely the last year, but you can't drive a neighborhood without seeing a free Karen Reed sign.
Oh, really?
Yeah, down my street, I have one. I have a quick photo. I'm sure people have seen this this billboard that is up in Boston. I think there's a few around
Foxborough. There's one in Foxborough in Boston. Yeah,
there's a few of them out there, right? And there's a QR code. You can donate, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like she's become one of the biggest stories in the area. But for people out there, we're going to play a quick 1-minute video. This is from the mainstream media's point of view, right? And this is what they put out there. But I think it was, I found this one, I thought it was a good kind of like basically a 101 from kind of the district attorney and the defensive side of the information. So let's do this real quick and we'll come back.
Free Karen Reed! Free Karen Reed!
Loyal supporters cheered as Karen Reed made her way into the courthouse. Reed is charged in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Prosecutors allege that after arguing with O'Keefe, Reed dropped him off at a fellow officer's Canton home, then backed into him with her SUV and left him unconscious in a blizzard. Today, her attorneys asked the judge to drop Reed's $80,000 bail, saying she needs that money to clear her name, and she will.
There will be no conviction because the evidence establishes her innocence. There is no jury anywhere who will ever vote to convict her for a crime she did not commit.
Reed's attorneys accuse the district attorney's office of failing to follow the real evidence in the case and of continuing to withhold key evidence from the defense, including O'Keefe's clothing and taillight pieces recovered at the scene.
A year and a half, and the defense still has not been allowed to so much as look at the physical evidence that the Commonwealth has had in its possession for 21 months and has so desperately withheld from the defense out of fear of what it might show.
Any suggestion that we're desperately withholding evidence from the defense as we're afraid of what it might show is just patently ridiculous.
Prosecutors say the evidence continues to be tested at the state crime lab.
Once this sort of round of testing is completed, we will certainly pick those items up and make them available for counsel.
Now, the prosecution is asking that the bail remain intact. The judge has taken that matter under advisement.
All right. So real quick, Will, you have a personal connection to Karen Reed. Is that correct? I got to unmute yourself.
He's muted.
One of my first jobs working was at a nursing home in Marion Manor. And Karen and I actually worked in the dietary department as dietary aides. And we worked together maybe 2 or 3 months. At the time, we're probably in our late teens, early 20s. And the impression that I had of her, and still today, is that she came from a good family. If I recall correctly, she went to a Catholic high school, had a good upbringing. And when I saw that the Karen Reed being portrayed by the DA's office is the Karen Reed that I worked with some 20 years ago, I was really taken aback by that, because the allegations that the DA's office is making against her seem to be out of character for the little girl that I knew working alongside me in the dietary department.
Her family's from Fall River. She grew up there. I'm told, so, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff we'll learn here tonight. We're almost 600 viewers, so let's get that up. Share this. We'll look at. There's a lot of comments already. We'll bring some up, but I want to go really through this because if you're just joining, I'm with Aidan, aka Turtle Boy. He's up to part 156, I think, came out today. But we're going to start from the beginning and kind of go through some of the stuff. We got an hour tonight with him. I want to go through some of the stuff. So if you could, Aidan, what did the medical examiner report the cause and time of death? And does that not match up with what the prosecutor's going with, or what you're kind of saying?
Well, the medical examiner said hypothermia that he died of, and he did die from hypothermia. But they also said that there was no signs of a fight, which is patently absurd. He has a boxer's fracture on his right hand. Anybody who's ever punched someone in the face before knows what that looks like. Also, his eyes were swollen shut. It looks like he got beat up by Mike Tyson. And his arms have what are clearly dog scratches and dog bites on them. And inside that house lived a 6-year-old. There it is, right there. I mean, they claim that those are abrasions. Abrasions. I mean, absurd, absolutely absurd to suggest that those are abrasions. Those are clearly lacerations that came from something with, something pointy and sharp, like claws or teeth that would pull down and cause your arm to have cuts like that. So Brian Albert, the homeowner, a Boston police sergeant, owned past tense, a very aggressive German Shepherd who twice sent people to the ER. The prosecution has attempted to hide that information by opposing the release of animal control records in Canton. However, that was one of the only decisions that's been favorable to the Karen Reed side, in that they got those records released, and it showed that 2 people went to the ER as a result of that. They have since gotten rid of Chloe, the family dog. Chloe is no longer around. Nobody knows where Chloe is. And they've sold the house and they've gotten rid of the basement floor. All of those things are things that people, it's suspicious behavior to do stuff like that. No one knows where the dog can be found. So yeah, the medical examiner is obviously a moron. She looked at that and she either worked backwards or had Michael Proctor, the state trooper, breathing down her neck, and gave them the answer that the state wanted to hear. And she was told ahead of time that this victim died from getting hit by a car. So when you're told that ahead of time, you work backwards, So
this is how the DA, and as that video portrays, is they were drinking, they got in an argument. She dropped him off at a friend's house, which is a police officer's house, I believe, right?
Yeah, so this is the home behind me is owned by a man named Brian Albert. He's was a well-respected sergeant in the Boston Police Department who was on the fugitive unit. He was on the show called Boston's Finest, and he was a known fighter, right? And they're a really well-established family in town. His brother is on the select board named Chris Albert. He's got another brother who's a detective in the Canton Police Department. And John was also a Boston police officer, but they didn't really know each other that well. They had met a couple times, and they were having like an after party. They all went out to this bar together called the Waterfall Bar. And afterwards, they were going to have like people over for more drinking, whatever. And Karen Reed wasn't feeling it. And so she dropped him off, and he was going to get a ride home later or something. And text me when things are good. Let me know when things are good in there. So she waited outside. John never texted her back. Finally, she got frustrated and she left. And it is believed, based on the data, his cell phone data, that shows him ascending and descending stairs inside. Is there a lot of feedback? You getting a lot of feedback?
There's a little bit of feedback, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's from you. I'm going to mute me and Will right now to see if I can get rid of it.
Okay. Yeah. So they dropped him off at this house. He ascended and descended stairs between 1221 and 1224, 3 flights of stairs. And she never went in the house, right? But she says that he did go in the house. And there was actually a car behind them driven by a witness named Ryan Nagel. And Ryan Nagel, according to his testimony, said that he pulled up behind them and that Karen Reed was alone in her car, that no one else was in there. And that she had their interior lights on, hands at 10 and 2, and there was no one outside the car, and there was no damage to the car. So the only place John O'Keefe could have been was inside the house. So John went in the house. That alone clears her, because if she didn't hit him, he's dead. So someone killed him, and it must have been someone inside that house.
Just so I can back that up real quick. So a witness came by and said they saw Karen Reed in her car with the lights on, no one outside. Who is this witness?
His name is Ryan Nagel. He is the brother of one of the girls who was inside the house. who came outside and told him she called for a ride. And then when the ride got there, she said, "Go home. I'm all set. I'm going to sleep here." She didn't end up sleeping there. She ended up getting a ride home an hour later with Jen McCabe, the woman who Googled how long to die in cold.
And that's the opposite of what the prosecution's kind of saying. She came, dropped him off, backed into him, killed him, and left. That's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, though finally they actually said it today. They finally put forth an actual theory today in the Supreme Judicial Court of Appeals. They said that first they said 3-point turn. It was a death by 3-point turn. Well, that didn't add up for a number of reasons. First of all, it's the wrong taillight. We figured that one out. If it was a 3-point turn and she struck him, it would have been the left tail light, not the right one. So that didn't make any sense. Secondly, the 3-point turn, she would have been going the wrong way. She wanted to go south instead of north. And so today they came out with a new theory of what happened. They said that she traveled 62 feet in reverse at a speed of 24 miles an hour and ran over him, even though he ended up 12 feet on the curb. So they ran over him, even though he has no bruising on his body, no broken bones, nothing. All of the injuries are just to the head. There's no injuries on the rest of the body. Tamerlan Tsarnaev got run over by his brother there, and his body was covered in burns, bruises, you name it, broken bones, everything. That's what it looks like when a 6,000-pound car runs over you. So John luckily had no bruises at all. He just had, a head wound and some dog scratches from her car, because apparently her car's made of barbed wire or razor blades or something. And they said that so they want us to believe that Karen Read went 62 feet forward and John O'Keefe just stood there and just said, "Let me know when you're ready. Let me know when you want to run me over." And then she accelerated to 24 miles an hour in reverse. I did a test today in my own driveway. I measured 62 feet out, and I'm going to do another one tomorrow. And we're going to videotape it. We measured out 62 feet. You ever drive 24 miles an hour in reverse? You ever try that?
No.
I wouldn't recommend it. It's one of the scary. I had 14 and I felt like I was going to die. Like, it's like reverse is a whole different game. Like 24 miles an hour in reverse to accelerate that quickly in only 62 feet, 2 first downs. That's it on a football field.
Aidan, let me ask you this.
It's frightening.
Has the defense attempted to get the cell phone records of the Alberts or anybody else in that home that night? Text messages, phone calls? You would think if a fight took place in the house and then there was people dragging a body and dumping it on the front lawn, there was going to be phone calls going back and forth, text messages. Has the prosecution produced that, or has the defense requested it?
Yeah, the defense has requested it. Twice it's been denied by the judge. They want to get Brian Albert's cell phone. And keep in mind, this guy's a Boston police officer who, by the way, never came out of the house when the body was discovered on the lawn by first responders at 6 a.m. And Karen Read was there and screaming, never came out of the house. So they want his cell phone. And why, if you have nothing to hide, why wouldn't you just show your cell phone? Like, eliminate yourself as a suspect. He won't hand it over. So we filed motions, and the judge, who's been very friendly to the Alberts, and the district attorney have fought that. And so the judge denied twice now them access to the cell phone. And so they're appealing it to the Supreme Judicial Court. And that's where we're at right now. Today, or yesterday rather, the Commonwealth opposed the appealing of the denial of the cell phone. A little confusing there, in the Supreme Judicial Court. So that will be heard in probably less than 2 months. And I'm telling you, there's something big on that phone, because there's no reason they would, fight so hard to prevent the defense from getting that phone if there was nothing on it.
Yeah, let me ask Will, as a lawyer, I was reading into this. Isn't there a discovery pretty fast when all this evidence is piling up? It looks like the prosecutor is delaying discovery to the defense for like a pretty long period. I think, Aidan, is it November that she's given the order for the testing to be done by? Yeah,
I mean, they still haven't handed over his tissue samples. Those have disappeared, or his clothing to be tested. Nothing ever gets tested. They don't hand over. They eventually, like, stuff trickles in whenever they feel like doing it. But yeah, that's been a major problem, is discovery in this case.
So, Will,
Yeah.
is that normal?
It's not, but unfortunately, it becomes common in the court system, and it becomes so discouraging as a defense attorney to read these things, or sometimes even have these types of things happen to me as a defense attorney. Karen Reed has very good attorneys, and without even looking at the docket, I can guarantee you that they filed a motion to preserve evidence in this case, whether it be DNA tissue, whether it be clothing, whether it be cell phone records. But the problem is, the more time that goes on, the higher probability of this evidence being lost or destroyed or even just erased. Think about getting cell phone records 2 years after an incident happened. First of all, does Verizon or T-Mobile still have those records?
They do.
They
do.
It becomes very frustrating. So, at what point does it become prosecutorial misconduct? And can the defense show that there's some type of bad intent, some type of nefarious intent by the DA's office or the state police to withhold this information from the DA's office?
Well,
And Aidan, let me
ahead.
ask you this real quick too. I've gone back and I looked at some of your past posts and some of your past blogs. You have been a supporter of police. You've been an advocate of the police department. Has this case changed your opinion about police, or you think this is just a bad seed or a bad apple that has to be exposed?
The first one. It's changed my opinion of the institution of police, because it's not a bad seed or bad apple. This is a system. Like, Michael Proctor is the state trooper, the detective who is good friends with the Alberts and the McCabe's, hid that information. He has planted taillight evidence in this whole thing. He has lied on police reports repeatedly and got caught doing so. And that'd be one thing if it's just him doing it. But he has bosses who are looking at his reports and who are allowing this to happen. And they are knowingly covering up the murder of a Boston police officer. For instance, there's a plow driver, right, by the name of Lucky Loughran, who plowed Fairview Road that night. The first person to interview him on the record was not the state police, me. I found Lucky Loughran, and he works for the Canton DPW, and I tracked him down because, according to Michael Proctor's report, the Canton DPW didn't plow Fairview Road that morning. But I heard they did. And so I went and found him, because that's what reporters do. And I interviewed him, and he said, I plowed that road at 2:30. And I said, was there a body on that front lawn at 2:30? He said, no. I said, would you have seen a body if a body was there? And he was adamant about it. Yes, I would have seen a body if a body was there. Michael Proctor never intentionally chose not to interview this material witness, the most important witness in the case, who could literally exonerate Karen Reed, because if there's no body there, then Karen Reed didn't kill him. And that means he must have still been in the house at the time. So it's not just what they did, it's what they didn't do that's so corrupt. And you can't do this with just one detective doing this. You need other detectives to, your superiors to sign off on this and go along with this. So after I wrote about it on August 8th, I wrote about the plow driver. What did the state police do 2 days later? They went and they interviewed Lucky Loughran, because they had to, because Turtle Boy found him. And I got a copy of their entire interview. And during the interview, Lucky Loughran told them that when he went by at 3 a.m. to do a second plow through, there was a Ford Edge sitting in the same exact spot where John's body was later discovered. So that Ford Edge either was involved in moving the body out there or hit him or something. Bottom line is, that was the last thing that was there before the body was discovered. There was no body before the Ford Edge got there, and there was a body afterwards. So you would think it would be the police's priority then to track down whoever drove that Ford Edge, because several Alberts own a Ford Edge. Brian Albert owns a Ford Edge. Colin Albert, his nephew, who is inside the house, owns a Ford Edge. Detective Kevin Albert, who also lives in town, owns a Ford Edge. And Tristan Morris, who is dating Caitlin Albert, also owns a Ford Edge. They all own a Ford Edge. And they have done nothing to track down who was driving that Ford Edge. Instead, what did they question Lucky Loughran about? Me. They're trying to charge me with wiretapping, because they believe that I transcribed our entire interview because I have a photographic memory, and they believe that apparently they're following their suspicion that I recorded the conversation because I'm just so good at my job that I remembered word for word everything that Lucky Loughran told me. So they are pursuing wiretapping charges against me instead of pursuing, the murder of a Boston police officer in the town of Canton. This is, if you can't, and nobody's speaking up about it, man. Where's the other cops to speak up about this? I haven't heard a single cop in this state go on record and say, you know what? This is actually bad policing. If you can't call out criminals who murdered one of your own, then the system is rotten. So yeah, this has forever changed my opinion about policing in this country.
So let me talk to you about, I know over the years, you've had a lot of lawsuits against you. I think you're still undefeated. Is that?
Still undefeated. That's right.
What pushback have you gotten back? I mean, are you getting, tickets? What's going on? Are you getting pushback?
I've been begging them to sue me. Like, I'm like if what I'm saying right now, I'm accusing you guys of murder, like straight up, you did it. I think you did it. And if this is at all untrue, this is slam dunk. I'm defaming you as bad as you get. Please sue me. Of course they won't, because they know that lawsuits open them up to discovery, right? I could file motions. I can get your cell phone that way, right? They can't get your cell phone in criminal court. I can get your cell phone in civil court though, can't I? There's a lot of tricks that we can do. I would love nothing more for them to sue me, but they won't do it because they know that I'm right. And they know that litigation would open themselves up to all sorts of stuff that could land them in jail for a long time.
So let's just do this. So I showed the video. It kind of summarizes what the prosecution and kind of tertiary what the defense says. What do you think happened that night on a timeline basis?
So I think that they got there at about 12:20 after going to the bars with all these people. And I think it was snowing. And I think she dropped them off in the driveway over here because there's a little storm door. And I think he ran into the house, right? Within a couple seconds, ran into the house because it's snowing. And I think when he got inside, I think he was confronted by 17-year-old Colin Albert, his neighbor, who was, meathead, star of a football team, but did not like John. They had issues because they were neighbors. They have a history of Colin throwing beer cans on John's lawn and just being a douche. Like Colin, there's videos of Colin threatening people. He got in fights all the time. So what I think happened is he went in that house and Colin Albert was there. And I think he's like, oh, this douchebag's here. And the two of them had words, and I think a fight started, right? I don't know who hit who. I mean, maybe John threw the first punch. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But when Colin Albert fights, I think they started a fight together, and I think Brian Albert isn't going to allow his nephew, Colin, to get beat up by this other cop who he barely knows. And I think a fight broke out. It probably lasted a minute or two. And I think something went terribly wrong during this fight. I think the dog attacked because the dog is loyal to Brian Albert, its owner. And I think due to the 3-inch laceration in the back of his head that he clearly bled out from, I believe that Colin or someone else used some sort of blunt object to hit him in the back of the head. And I think at some point there was just a moment where he was just, they were just aghast. Like, what do we do? Like, I don't think they intended to kill John O'Keefe, but I think there was a moment where somebody went too far and severely injured John O'Keefe. And I think this happened while Karen Reed was sitting outside in those 10 minutes while she was sitting outside. And I think that they were just looking out the window, waiting for her to leave, because if she came in that house, they were all in serious trouble. Like, well, what are they going to do if she goes in the house? Like, they can't kill her too. Like, what are they going to do? So there's praying she leaves, and she did. And I think that they remembered where she was. She was parked right over on this side, waiting for him to call her back. And I think they said, let's just dump the body right where she was and say he never came in. And their story is really simple. He never came in the house. I don't know what happened to him. I thought he went home. He never came in the house. The house, by the way, was never searched. Right? If any of you guys have a dead body found in your front lawn, the cops are searching your house, period. And they're going to ask for your cell phones, and they're going to have to eliminate you as a suspect, right? Before, but that's not how they were treated. 5 of the people in the house were never interviewed by police, not once. They never had their phones taken or searched or anything like that. And the house itself was never searched. They didn't even put up the yellow police tape the entire day. When the Canton police got there at 6 a.m, they searched around his body, and they didn't find any taillight or anything like that. They found shards of a cocktail glass and 6 droplets of blood. And it started snowing, right? The state police take over a foot of snow falls. 12 hours later, the state police are now in charge. And the lead detective is a gentleman by the name of Michael Proctor, corrupt, conflicted Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor's entire family has been so close with the Albert family that their children take professionally done photos together at Sears. Like, it's weird how close they call them their second family. That's how close, and they've known each other for decades. And Michael Proctor, of course, doesn't treat the Alberts like suspects like they normally would be. He treats them as witnesses only. Nothing in the house is searched. They're never asked to turn, like, can I see your cell phones? Nothing like that happens. Again, Brian Albert didn't even come out of the house when there was a dead body on his lawn. No one inside the house came outside the house. And ask yourself, why? Why does that happen? Like, probably because he had cuts on his face. Probably because there was a struggle. John's hand, black and blue everywhere. John got his hits. He went down swinging. Whatever happened, he went down swinging in that house. But again, it's not my job to solve the murder. It's Michael Proctor's job to solve the murder. But they were just going to frame this innocent woman the entire time. They had no problem with it, and they are hell-bent on it. 12 hours later, when the state police did their search of the scene after a foot of snow had fallen, they found 4 red pieces of taillight that somehow the Canton Police Department missed during their search, and a size 12 shoe that wasn't, because John only had 1 shoe on. You would think, especially if you found a corpse with 1 shoe on it, that you would search the house, because where's his other shoe? They didn't do that. But luckily, the state police, they found what the Canton police missed: a missing shoe and several pieces of taillight. In the upcoming weeks, Michael Proctor would go back to that house 6 more times and find 35 pieces of taillight total. He's the taillight whisperer, we call him. He just kept finding more and more taillight, because that's the only evidence that they got on Karen Reed, is pieces of her taillight kept appearing. Now, how'd the taillight get there? Well, Karen Reed went to her parents' house in Dighton, obviously closer to you guys, right? Dighton's probably like 40 minutes from Canton, 40 minutes south of there. So she goes there to her parents' house, and Michael Proctor shows up there at 3:00 and immediately calls for her car to be towed. Except in his report, he puts that he got there at 4:30 and didn't get the car towed until 5:30. Why does he say 5:30? Well, the state police did their search in Canton at 5:45. If he had the car towed at 5:30, then he couldn't have broken the taillight and planted it. He wouldn't have time to get from Dighton to Canton. But unfortunately for him, there's alarm.com footage from their house showing the car being towed at 4:15. And there's a Dighton Police Department report that shows the same, that the scene was cleared by 4:17, which gave him 1 hour and 15 minutes with that car unaccounted for. And that's plenty of time to get back to Canton, break the taillight, and put 4 red pieces of taillight right before the state police do their search.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Will, I know you want to have a question.
Yeah, Aidan, it's no secret at this time that the Federal Bureau of Investigations is somehow involved in this case. Now, the FBI does not get involved in local murders, but they do get involved in government corruption. What's the word on the street? Why are FBI agents interviewing and possibly even convening a grand jury with the U.S. attorney on this matter? Word on the street.
Yeah, I mean, Fall River knows a lot about FBI investigations and United States attorneys, but the FBI is involved in this, right? Because they are investigating corruption in the district attorney's office, right? Like you said, they don't do murders. They're not here to solve the murder. They're here to see who covered up the murder. So a federal grand jury was convened months ago, and we have found out that several people who were inside that house have been subpoenaed to testify in front of the grand jury, including Jen McCabe, 17-year-old Colin Albert, Jen's daughter, Allie McCabe, who now admits that she was Collins' ride home that night. Brian Albert has been subject of the FBI grand jury down there, and probably other people. His daughter and his son were also. So the feds work quietly. So we don't. Karen Reed's attorneys are kept in the dark about that. Although I'm sure they're supplying them with new information as it comes in. But we can say definitively that Karen Reed is not the target of the FBI investigation, which means that they believe that a murder occurred inside that house, and they believe that the state police and the district attorney's office have helped to cover this up and prosecute a woman who they know to be innocent. They also, when I interviewed Lucky Loughran, he told me that the FBI came to his house in early May and that they interviewed him and they confronted him with GPS data showing that he had plowed Fairview Road at 2:30 that night. And so he's like, yeah, he'd be happy to tell anybody. He's told the FBI that story. He told me, and he told Karen Reed's private investigators that same story. So that means the FBI, they know everyone who was in that house, including John O'Keefe. And they're getting to the bottom of not only who did it, but how did this get covered up after the fact?
And it's abundantly clear without your reporting, this wouldn't even be this far, I think.
It would have, because again, this is all court records, but what I've done is,
but you started this trail, I think I would say, right?
I would say that there is a crowd there and that public opinion has drastically changed as a result of our reporting. That's definitely what I'm good at, right? To have that hundreds of people at every court date now, hundreds of people showing up with signs yelling "Free Karen Reed" for a criminal defendant who's charged with murdering a police officer is unheard of. Again, I'm a guy who traditionally backs the blue. I mean, that's what my record is on this. And I'm here supporting an alleged cop killer, right? And that tells you just how outrageous this is. Because, yeah, I do support the blue. I support John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a police officer too. And you don't see a single Boston police officer at any of his hearings because they know it's a sham. They know that Karen Reed didn't do this.
So what do they say this came from?
They don't say anything. They don't have a theory. Like that the defense is asked several times, like, how are you alleging that this happened? They don't have a theory. They don't have any explanation, nothing. So why aren't they saying? Because no matter what they say, it's going to sound ridiculous. Like, how can you possibly explain how those injuries right there came from a Lexus hitting someone in reverse? Explain that one to me.
Yeah, that looks like, just first look at it, it's like defensive marks. Maybe you got your arm up and something's happening, or like you said,
or a dog.
Yeah.
Dog jumps up on you. That's what you do. You put your arm up, right?
It's like defensive wounds. I mean, and there was no other wounds around the body besides the head. Is that what you said?
Nothing. There was the laceration in the back of the head. There was he had like raccoon eyes, like black and blue, a couple of cuts on his nose and stuff like that. But as far as like here down, pristine, nothing, no bruises, no breaks, even though he was allegedly hit by a Lexus LX 570 is the biggest car they make, right? It weighs 3 tons and it was going 24 miles an hour when it struck him. The Lexus itself has no dents, no scratches, just a broken taillight. That's it. And John's body has no broken bones, no bruises below where, exactly in the parts where he would have been hit. And so that's why the prosecution hasn't come up with a theory about how those cuts got on him, because no matter what they say, they're painting themselves into a box here, and it's just going to get picked apart and they're going to look foolish.
All right, go ahead, Will.
I think he's muted.
Yeah, you had a question, Will?
Or not.
Okay, let me
Okay.
So you did this long list of kind of like how to fight information that comes out. And one of them was, did Karen Reed confess to the crime and was she drunk? So you kind of gave a rebuttal to that. So go ahead and give me what your answer is on that.
Yeah. I mean,
she never confessed, right?
Yeah. I mean, the evidence they have on her is alleged where she was saying, I hit him. Right. But as she said on Dateline, it was preceded by a did and proceeded by a question mark, right? Because they had put it in her head that like, could you have hit him? And she's like, oh my, she gets there, she sees a body. She's like, oh my God, did I hit him? What happened? Like, how did this happen? Because you would never think, like, he got beat up inside the house and they threw him outside to die like trash. Who would ever think of that? She's just like, oh my God, did I do this? What happened? Oh my God. It's like with my cousin Vinny. I shot the clerk. It's the same thing. That's ridiculous to say that's a confession. As for the alcohol, that is just a distraction. First of all, everyone was drinking, right, that night. She's definitely guilty of, she drank like 4 drinks and drove. She shouldn't have been driving. She was probably like 0.12 or something like that, right? But not like, Ted Kennedy drunk. Like, just, she's probably feeling good and shouldn't have been behind the wheel of a car, right? That doesn't make you a killer. Like, it doesn't change the physics of it all. So that's just a distraction. When they talk about the alcohol being involved, it's like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if she was, catatonic, right? It doesn't change the fact that his injuries do not align with the vehicle.
And is it kind of questionable that there's no video? I heard there was, I didn't get a chance to read all your articles, but I was seeing about questionable, everyone has these Nest cams, all these kind of things. Is that something that they have to wait for a discovery to see if there is video, or?
So funny you'd ask it. So first of all, when Karen Reed drove home, right, she allegedly would have a broken taillight, right? Because she just killed him. So you would think that she passed by hundreds of homes on her way there. You would think that the police would go to every single one of those homes and say, "Can we look at your camera?" Because all you need is one video of her driving with a broken taillight and you got her, right? You got her for murder. I knocked on several doors where people have Ring cameras. Not a single one of them had the police come to their door and ask for rings. Not one. Again, this investigation, the cover up isn't what they did so much as what they didn't do. They didn't interview the plow driver. They didn't ask any of these people for footage. And in the center of town is the library, the Canton Library. And she would have gone past the Canton Library between around 12:37 to 12:39-ish. So the IT director handed over the library footage from that night to the state police. And then the state police, I guess, put that on a CD or something and handed it over to the prosecution and then the defense. Except when they handed it over, there was 2 minutes missing. They have all the footage that night, except from 12:37 to 12:39. It's just gone. It just stopped working the moment Karen Reed went through the busiest intersection in town. The most important footage just it's gone. And they have no explanation for why. And we're supposed to think that this is just on the up and up. Yeah. Don't you hate when that happens? When the library video is working from every time up until 12:37. And then at 12:39, it just starts working again. But right during that 2-minute window there, it just stops working. And we're supposed to believe this is legitimate. I mean, they don't even care how this looks. That's what's scary about this. We all know that's laughable and stupid. And obviously they're covering this up and they just don't care. You know why they don't care? Because they have all the guns. What are you going to do about it? When you have all the guns and you control, like, there's nothing. This is why the Second Amendment exists, by the way, right? Is to protect people from a tyrannical government. And that is exactly what is going on right here. This is a tyrannical government lynching an innocent woman in front of us. And they don't care that it's very obvious they're doing it because they have all the guns. And what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Except protest.
Hey, Will, we still can't hear you, so I'm going to have to try one more time, and then I'll maybe leave and come back, and I'll ask. Yeah, there's a million comments here. The one that stands out to me most, Aidan, is that the police cam investigator never checked in the house is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I've watched, I don't know if you have HBO, there's a thing called body cam. We've seen cops. When there's a murder or even an accidental death, especially if there's some kind of suspicion, you would check with pretty quickly. Maybe not right away if you thought it was an accident, but you definitely would want to check, I would assume, like right away, right? It just seems kind of crazy they didn't check the house.
It's like policing 101. Dead bodies on your front lawn. We're coming in the house. We need to eliminate suspects, right? Like, that's one of the first things they do is just eliminate you as a suspect. So Brian Albert, he might not have done it, right? So you still got to go through a thing and eliminate him as a possible suspect. They didn't do any of that with these people. They were not even interviewed until 11:30 in the morning, 5.5 hours after the body was discovered. And they weren't interviewed at the police station and brought into separate rooms. They all went to Jennifer McCabe's house for the friends and family meeting. And there they were interviewed by Michael Proctor, who has known these people his entire life. and he pretended to introduce himself to them. Nice to meet you, except he already knew them. And they were interviewed together, and they had 5.5 hours at that point to get their story straight, which was really simple. Karen Reed came here. We saw her outside. John never came in, and then she left. That's it. That's the whole story. There's nothing else to talk about. But they never interviewed. Colin Albert was never interviewed. They hid the fact that he was inside that house. Julie Nagel was never interviewed until almost a year later. Another woman by the name of Sarah Levinson, who was a nurse in Milton, never interviewed until almost a year later. Caitlin Albert, the daughter of Brian Albert, never interviewed. Brian Albert Jr. slept in the house that night, never interviewed. So all these people were just never spoken to, even though they were, it's like you would think they would ask them, like, did you hear anything? That would be loud. A car going 24 miles an hour in reverse, and boom, imagine the force of that. John weighed 217 pounds. It would have been one of the, like the marathon bombing, like that kind of loud. Bam. And nothing. They just didn't bother asking him any questions. Just Karen Reed did it. Simple.
All right, well, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Ken.
Perfect. So Aidan, one of the issues that is going to possibly result from this, let's say there is corruption. Every case that this sergeant has worked on now has to be examined. If you are a defendant and are doing a prison sentence, a state prison sentence, and this was the lead detective, the lead sergeant on your case, how many other plants were they? How many other false reports were made? This will be a nightmare for the DA's office if they have to go now reopen every case this sergeant has worked on. It's like the drug lab scandal all over again.
It's a lot like that, Annie Dukin. And you know who Michael Proctor is also the lead investigator on the Brian Walsh case, the guy in Cohasset who killed his wife, who's still missing. And so that, and by the way, that case was cracked through Google searches. Same as this, same shit. Google searches. That guy was Googling crazy things like, how do I get rid of a 115-pound body if I have to? How many pieces do I need to chop it up into? But so he's the same lead investigator on it. Nobody wants this to go down, the feds to get Michael Proctor more than Brian Walsh's attorneys do. That will make their job a lot easier. So yeah, that's one of my theories about why the state police are continuing to cover for this clown, is because it would compromise so many other important cases.
So where do we go from here, Aidan? So we have a court case coming up. When is the court case coming up?
The next one's scheduled. The next hearing is for December 8th. And then go ahead.
No, there's no trial set yet.
The trial is set for March 12th. It will begin. And that would be at least, yeah. But, I hope it never comes to that. It's all about the feds come down with an indictment before then, which I'm told they will. Then this trial will never happen, nor should, as much as I would be entertained by this trial, I don't think it's fair to put her parents through that, and put her through that, even though there's no chance of conviction, none. But it just the anxiety that I can't imagine. Like, if you thought there was a 1% chance that your plane would crash, you probably wouldn't get on it. And it's like they would rather prefer that this would go away and the feds get the people who actually did that. So, your guess is as good as mine. 6 months from now, we're going to be in a totally different position.
So what do you think of the behavior of the judge and the prosecutor? Have they been fair or?
Auntie Beverly Cannoni is the most corrupt, incompetent judge I've ever seen in my life. She has no control of her courtroom. She is blatantly biased to defense. She's not even the judge on the case. She's not. The presiding judge is Daniel O'Shea. They rotate the judges in and out. But she is what's called the regional administrative justice. So she has the ability, she's like the captain. So she can kind of kick out the judge who's assigned to that courtroom. And she did. Like, it's weird how personal she wants to be in this. And all of her rulings go in favor of the prosecution, all of them. She doesn't like the defense. She knows, she's heard all of this stuff. She heard about Lucky Lawford in court the other day. She knows about the Google search. Any other judge would say, whoa. What's going on here? Let's get to the bottom of this before we go any further. But she's just like, let's go. She just pays no attention to it whatsoever. The district attorney, Michael Morrissey, put out a statement almost a month ago now. One of the most heinous, reprehensible things I've ever heard in my life. And he put out a statement demanding that we, the protesters, stop protesting, that we stop harassing witnesses like Jennifer McCabe by asking her, why did you Google how long to die in cold? Because he says they're all innocent, that they're all, but they were never investigated. He doesn't know that they're innocent. And so he put out this ridiculous statement. And he also said in his statement that Michael Proctor, the lead detective, wasn't at the scene of the crime that day, which is a lie. His own charging documents state that Michael Proctor was at 34 Fairview Road that day. And if he wasn't, why would the lead detective not go to the scene of the crime? That's insane. So they don't even care. I mean, this guy, Michael Morrissey, got 98% of the vote last election. You think he cares? This is like, he can do whatever he wants. That guy has been sucking off the public tit for the last 48 years. He was a state representative when he was 22 years old in 1976. Then he went to the state Senate. Then he became the district attorney after Bill Keating stepped down in 2010. This guy has never had a real job his entire life. He has, never been challenged. Thinks he can do whatever he wants. And he seems to not understand that he himself is under investigation by the FBI. He is the target of that.
And her bail was set initially at 100,000. Now it's 80,000. Is she still in jail or is she out?
No, she's out. Again, which is luckily for her, but
Go ahead,
I have
Will.
no doubt they'd love to lock her up if they could.
Aidan, what's your advice to the average citizen right now who wants to get involved, who's sitting on the sidelines, seeing the injustice that's happening here? It costs a lot of money to fund a defense. It is emotionally draining to have to go through this type of a trial if you're the defendant. It weighs on a family. I can't even think of the emotional distress that Karen Reed is having to go through at this time, or anybody really involved with the case. Somebody like yourself who has been, intimately involved in this, what can people do to get involved and help uncover some injustice that's happening here?
Yeah, so there's a lot. So it's hard to, give people's the Reader's Digest version of it. So for that reason, we put out a video called Framed. It's on YouTube, and I can maybe Mike can put it in the comments or whatever. It's a 30-minute crash course overview. It's got like 85,000 views on it, and it perfectly summarizes everything. And when you watch that, you'll get it. It makes sense. So I would urge people to share that with as many people as possible, and then get them to, read our blog, tbdailynews.com, and especially if they live in Norfolk County. Because again, I'm not hiding what we're trying to do here. We are trying to affect the jury pool. We want to make it impossible for them to put together and panel a jury in that county with 12 people who have never heard of this case before. We want to change. We want to get the truth out there before this ever goes to trial. That is our goal.
Yeah. So my suggestion for everyone out there, I just put the link in all the channels. So go there, watch that 30-minute video. It's tbdailynews.com. It's not turtleboysports.com. You can go there, but it's the tbdailynews.com, which is turtleboydailynews.com. You want to go there. He's got a 156-part series on there. You got counting. What would you estimate? You've done about 300-400 hours of writing, if not more.
Oh, I mean, this has been my job for the last 5 months. I used to do a variety of stories, but every day now I wake up and it's just this. It's very rare. There's been some big E fights this week I'd like to get to, and I haven't had time because I'm so invested in the story.
Yeah. I promised to get Aidan off here before 7. We're getting that time right now. He's done a lot of stories that have impact, and this is one of the biggest ones. I would say Monica Gannon Grant was probably the biggest one before this, right?
Yeah, she's up there. Yeah. Or the state police scandal in 2010 with there was a couple state police scandals we did. Yeah. But
yeah,
this is biggest.
Yeah. There's not a lot of independent journalism out there anymore that's not painted by advertising money, I would say, right? Like, you have the Boston Globe, you have all these big newspapers, but they get massive, they're in my view, very partisan, where I think you're very independent. And of course, when you're independent, people do, the legacy media does go after the independent media when they're doing stuff that they should be doing, right? You're covering a story that I think a lot of people don't cover. And then the mainstream media kind of covers it, and then you don't get credit for a lot of it, right? So I think maybe I'm giving you too much credit.
With this, it's gonna be hard not to credit, because again, those crowds are out there because of us, because we're rallying people towards this. There's a billboard.
They never mention you in their articles. articles. They never give you the credit.
Some dude, Huffington Post called me a gonzo journalist the other day. That's the biggest compliment I could have gotten from a left-wing media outlet. So I've definitely gotten some with this because it's impossible not to. I'm on top of the stairs with a bullhorn at court. Like I've done interviews on Court TV with Vinnie Politan, and I expect, and I've been contacted by several documentary producers in California who are looking to do a major, streaming documentary series on this.
Yeah.
Yes,
so Gregor wants to know if you're doing your Turtle Club tonight.
I am. I got to set it up after dinner.
Okay. So I promised to get him out. It's 6:59. I promised I'd get you off before 7. So here we are. All right. Thanks, Aidan. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right. Everyone out there, if you love this, we'll try to get Aidan on again as he puts out more articles. Just look forward to it. Hopefully here soon. Take care, everyone.